let's look at an even more complex argument. And again, I'll give it to you on a whole separate page. So this is about a fictional drug that I didn't want to give a name because I don't know anything about drugs. So let's say drug A is, here's the excerpt. Drug A is a drug that comes into the country from overseas. Making drug A legal will allow the government to study it. That will lead to greater knowledge of drug A's effects, which in turn will lead to better health care for those who use drug A. Better health care means healthier drug users. So counterintuitively, making drug A legal would actually make users of drug A healthier. Okay, take a minute here. This one might take you a little bit longer, but I really encourage you, really bang your head against the wall on this one for a few minutes and see if you can come up with the form. And okay, pause now. Okay, we're back. Here's what I'll say. This one is obviously much more complex. And this one, there's actually a little bit of noise in the excerpt. That is something that's irrelevant to the argument. If you want to pause now and see, there's one claim, one sentence in here, which is actually irrelevant to the argument. See if you can figure what that out. Figure out what that is now. All right, what that is this first claim. It's sort of like, it really doesn't matter to this argument. And we'll see why once we figure out the conclusion. I'm working out of step here. But once we see the conclusion, we'll see that this is irrelevant to the conclusion. So let's ask that. What's the conclusion? Again, I invite y'all to pause here, see if you can figure out what the conclusion is. All right, the conclusion is this last claim, that making drug A legal would actually make users of drug A healthier. What tells me that? Well, there's the so. There's also the fact that it kind of just seems to follow from everything else, which is this sort of chaining effect, like this will lead to this, this will lead to this, this will lead to this. So this first thing will lead to this last thing, and that's the conclusion. Okay, and once you know that that's the conclusion, it's about whether making drug A legal would make users of that drug healthier, then you know that the fact that it comes from overseas is kind of irrelevant, right? So I introduced, this is the first time you've seen this in one of these excerpts, some noise in the argument, something that's irrelevant to the argument coming in. Okay, so what pattern does it fit? It doesn't fit any of these exactly, so that makes this a little bit more complex too. But it does require you to see again that there are hidden conditionals, hidden if-then claims here, right? There's actually more than one. So look at this first relevant claim, the second claim overall, making drug A legal will allow the government to study it. Again, I invite y'all to pause here, see if you can formulate this into an if-then claim. All right, here it is. There's your first if-then claim. If you didn't get that one, take another minute and see if you can see other hidden if-then claims in this, right? Okay, pause now. Okay, here we are back. Again, what you get in the second one is another if-then claim, but again, this is sort of hard because you see that will lead to greater knowledge of drug A's effects. Well, what's the that there? It's the government studying drug A. It's referring to the prior or the end of the prior sentence. So if the government then we will have greater knowledge of drug A's effects. Okay, that's your second if then, but there's more. But wait, there's more. See if you can see a third hidden if then claim. Pause now if you want to. All right, so here we actually get two premises in the same sentence. So here's another one, which in turn will lead to better healthcare for those who use drug A. What is the which referring to there? Well, it's the greater knowledge of drug A's effects. So we can see here, if we have greater knowledge of drug A's effects, then we will have better health care for those who use drug A. Okay, you might ask, why am I changing up the wording a little bit with each of these, right? Like in this case, we will have better health care for those who use drug A, but here it just says will lead to better health care for those who use drug A. Well, I'm trying to make it fit the pattern. I'm having to make small little changes to make it fit the pattern. And one of those changes is I have to make it a full sentence, right? This will lead to this. Well, this will lead to better healthcare for those who use drug A. Better healthcare for those who use drug A is not a sentence. So I'm just turning it into a sentence, right? Because we have to put sentences in for these variables we said in order to fill the pattern out. Okay, we're still not done with our conditionals. We have here better healthcare means healthier drug users. Again, I'm seeing that that's a hidden conditional, or one way to rephrase that at the very least might not be a hidden conditional, but you can rephrase it as a conditional and that will help you fit it into one of these patterns. So, but again, we want the sentence to be the same sentence as we had here, right? Because here we're referring to better healthcare, but that's just what we're talking about here at the end of this sentence. So in order to make it fit the pattern, I'm already looking ahead to this pattern just to kind of spoil it for you. It's this pattern right here. Oops, my bad. It is this pattern right here. It's kind of that pattern. It's the chaining of conditionals together where you have if A then B, if B then C, and you can continue this pattern is my next point. If C then D, if D then E, and then you can chain all of those together with if A then E, right? So this pattern can continue infinitely, really. So this can also be if C then D, and this can continue indefinitely, right? And the only thing is, the conclusion is going to have to change to reflect the first link in the chain and the last link in the chain. And this is a valid way of reasoning because if you know all of these conditionals are true, then you can link them together. If you know that if it's raining, then it's cloudy, and you also know that if it's cloudy, then it's not as bright outside. And if you also know that if it's not as bright outside, then I won't need my sunglasses, then you know that if it's raining, I won't need my sunglasses, right? And that chain could be longer or shorter. The length of it doesn't matter. It's always going to be valid. So as long as we're chaining these conditionals together, have we come to an endpoint here? I just paraphrased better healthcare means healthier drug users as if, oh, I didn't write that one down. So if we have better healthcare for users of drug A, then users of drug A will be healthier. And again, I'm rephrasing that to make it a full sentence, right? Healthier drug users is not a full sentence. So in order to fit that into a conditional, I have to make it a full sentence. Okay, now I'm at the conclusion. So what is the conclusion? Well, if we want to keep our sentences constant here, it's going to be, therefore, if we make drug A legal, then users of drug A will be healthier. And again, part of that is reading what the conclusion actually says, but part of it is knowing that this form requires, if I'm going to fit it into this form right here, the A has to, up in premise 1, has to be the same as the A in the conclusion. And the E in the conclusion has to be the same as the E that comes at the tail end of the last premise. So I take sentence right here. So if we make drug A legal, and I put it right here, and I take the sentence that comes at the end of this chain, users of drug A will be healthier, and I put it right here. And again, the valid way of reasoning. And again, let's put our numbers in there just for uniformity. So what you can see now, once you get this all up here, is hopefully a few things. You see the structure of the argument a little bit better. You see that by clarifying the language a little bit, you might be able to see, oh, it's just linking conditionals together, right? Whereas they're using language about, well, this will allow, this will lead to, this means healthier drug users. All of those are being rephrased for uniformity's sake to be each one is a conditional put in the same form. And now, the second thing you learned is, oh, now that I identified the conclusion and I identified the argument form as being this linking of conditionals together, I can see why this first sentence is totally irrelevant to the argument. It's not part of the conditional. That helps me make sense of that. I kind of saw that that was irrelevant, but now I can make sense of it. And now finally, if you wanted to evaluate this argument, you could look at each of these claims and say, well, I felt like something was going wrong in this argument, but I couldn't identify what. Now I can say, okay, I know that it's a valid argument. That means if the premises are true, the conclusion has to be true. So the reasoning is good. So now if I disagree with it, I've got to find one of these four premises that I disagree with. So which one is it? Well, I don't know, take a wild guess. You might not disagree with the argument at all, but assume that I do. And maybe I say, oh, I actually think premise 4 is false here. So I think it's not true that just because we make better healthcare for users of drug A, then they're going to be healthier. I don't think that's true. I think there could be situations where they have better healthcare, but they're not healthier because they don't make use of the healthcare, and maybe they don't make use of the healthcare because they're on this drug. So I don't know, just a wild shot in the dark. I might say, actually making drug A legal makes more users of drug A. People use it more. And then maybe it doesn't make for more people using it, but maybe the people who do use it a lot more frequently. And so if they're using it more frequently, maybe even if they do make use of the healthcare, they're not necessarily going to be healthier, especially if it's a really destructive drug. Okay, again, if that evaluation didn't make sense to you, that's fine. That's not the point of the session, for you to understand why some fictional drug might not making it legal might not make you healthier. The point was, getting the argument into valid form can help you evaluate the argument.